So the poem she's referring to is by Baba Taher. ز دست دیده بود دل هر دو فریاد، هر آنچه دیده بیند دل کند یاد، بسازم خنجری نیشه ز فولاد، زنم بر دیده تا دل گردد آزاد. I sometimes wonder as to how these poems are written. I think it was Betty Davis who had once remarked that old age is not for sissies. It's not something you can say when you're 20 or 30 or 40 or even 50 or 60. You're like in your 70s or 80s. And you really have to be tough-skinned, because Betty Davis used to be very attractive when she was young. And like the rest of us, as we get older, we get uglier. Especially as a woman in a culture such as this, where you're forced really for the most part to live through your body, to walk around and realize that as a woman you're becoming invisible, that you remember your youth, but the facts of your life is that you're all wrinkled up. It's difficult to walk, difficult to remember things. And so she looks herself in the mirror possibly, and then she just says, if you're a wimp, if you're gonna whine, if you're gonna cry, if you're gonna scream, you're just not made for this. And so, maybe she was just having a bad day, a moment of insight, where she was just saying, old age is not for sissies. Because I'm sure, she probably did have days where she would sit with her friends and have coffee and have tea and have a good time, talk about the past. And it's just that one moment becomes one of the most insightful things that she had ever said. And it's kind of like this poem by Baba Taher. I don't even know where to start really, because when I hear it, it's very devastating and there is no way out of it. You live in a world that it's very difficult to understand. You live amongst people who are very difficult to understand. You have to be in relationships with all sorts of things. And you have all these experiences, some positive, some negative, some neutral where you're just indifferent towards them. But, it's like you go to class and then you go home and you want to have some dinner, but the ideas of the class are not leaving you alone, so you just can't eat dinner. Or you sit amongst friends and you want to have a conversation, and let's just say you have just read a big, thick book about Buddhism and his ideas about talking. These are friends you haven't seen for a while, and you want to just catch up. And you're a person, to some extent, who takes themselves very, very seriously. And then you want to chit-chat, and then you remember what the Buddha said, and it just ruins you. And the poem really is just about that. ز دست دیده و دل. Dida means eyes, but really it's not limited to your eyes. It's just about the five senses that, impressions are coming your way from all over the place. They enter through your nose, through your eyes, through your ears, through your mouth, through your touch. And they leave a mark. What's his name? Anthony Hopkins, a long time ago, played him in a movie, and the movie was called Stain. And all these experiences that you have through the senses, they leave a stain inside you, And if you happen to be very unlucky in life, you come from Iraq, for example, or you come from Ukraine, or if you've seen this action movie, Ray Donovan, where these 3, 4, 5 brothers were going to church at a very young age, but the pastor of this church kind of robbed them of their innocence. So from a very young age, you have this traumatic experience. There are things you see that leave a stain inside you and you can't get rid of them. There are things you see that other people have and you want. And there is so much envy inside you, so much jealousy inside you. I went to, after dropping off the kids, went to Safeway. I went to the frozen section where the ice creams are. And they had these huge gallons of Haagen-Dazs ice cream. It was on sale. They're usually like $12 or something. $5. And so I filled the basket with like 50 buckets of ice cream. And then I went a couple more steps down, and I realized that they had Itzit ice creams as well. And the kids really like Itzit. And that too was on sale. So I got 50 boxes of Itzits. I didn't even think about where I'm going to, find the place to store, but it didn't really matter. Then I said, I remember in Roseville there was a place called Ben & Jerry's, and they had this ice cream called Coffee Buzz Buzz. I said to myself, maybe it's on sale as well. So I went there, and lo and behold, there it is, two for $4. So I got, 100 buckets of those. And I realized that I had spent half hour, 40 minutes just looking for ice cream. And it's really so difficult to overcome the desires that live inside you, to overcome the memories that you have inside you, whether the memories are one of nightmare or they're pleasant, it matters very little. And, one day you just come home and you just want to sit and you want to relax, but, it haunts you. It just doesn't leave you alone. And to some extent it reminds you of the Gospel of Judas, that, ultimately he comes to realize, Jesus does, that in the Gospel of Judas, that as long as you live in the body, your five senses, the memory becomes a sixth sense. They're always active. They kind of just push you around. And Baba Taher comes from the Sufi tradition. It's where you want your physical body to some extent to be disconnected to the world, because you don't really find it very nourishing, very satisfying. The less you have, the better you are. But it just doesn't work that way. So he says, that everything that I experience, it's like my heart or my soul is like a floppy disk. It records everything, and then it brings them to life and pushes them in my face, where I have to see my daily experiences or experiences from 10, 20, 30 years ago. That we are bound by them, enslaved by them, imprisoned by them. And there is no way to escape the desires, the memories. It's impossible. And you don't even have to be in the world. The world just is inside you, and it's always pursuing and chasing you, forcing you to walk instead of fly. It's such a, I think, awful imagery if you were to translate it word by word, that I want to make a dagger, a knife, and I want to put that dagger in my eye socket and just pluck out my eyes. Because if I was to be blind, then I wouldn't be able to see anything. And if I don't see anything, I don't desire anything. And if I don't desire anything, I don't pursue anything. You're free of so many things. And if you're able to just pluck out your eyes, or remove yourself from your senses, then you can really, really, really be free. I don't know what good this poem does to those of us, who have a family, who have a job, who have a life. I mean, don't get me wrong, these are great poems. They're inspiring. They kind of give us some insights about the facts of life and the human condition. But there isn't really much you can do except to have come to a place in life. And you can't do it when you're young. It's like being a mother of 2 kids or 3 kids, and you read this poem and then you say, okay, I'm slowly going to remove myself from physical life. Well, how is that possible? You have kids, they need to go to school, they need to eat, they have friends. You can't lock them up and force them to become a monk, because then they'll become lopsided as they age and move into society. So, all of us, we have things we need to do. You have classes to teach, you have a house to take care of. All of us are connected. There is no way to escape any of this stuff. And maybe the point of these poems is not for any of us to kind of walk away from life. Maybe it's just a few of us sitting together, wanting something we can't have. Finding moments where even if your senses are active, they can be in relationship to something that perhaps has some depth, is a bit more meaningful. I remember when we were gathering at Hussein's, every time that we were not around him, life was difficult. And our only solace, the only oasis that we had was, when he would call and say, why don't you guys come over? Or Hussein would call and say, let's have a gathering tonight where we can play music. We would have, a modest dinner, and then we would start playing music. And, the poems are quite sad. The music itself was quite sad. Kazim's singing was quite sad. My singing was quite sad. And yet there was, we all shared the idea that the path is quite difficult. Being human is quite difficult. And for those few moments, all of us came together with this understanding. And then by 2 in the morning, we were far too exhausted to feel anything, to remember anything. We'd just go home and crash. But you would wake up and you would have a nice memory.